Happy opening day, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes.
Look at what all you sweet chinchillas have been hammering in the futures market on the DraftKings Sportsbook. So high expectations once again for the Mets and Yankees. And for some reason, people think the best baseball player on the planet, Shohei Ohtani, can win American League MVP. 10% of the bets coming in on Julio, Steve Buchanan, Rodriguez.
Odds much closer on the National League side, okay? Turner, Nunez Jr., Arenado, most bet players to win. Acuna Jr., am I okay?
Are you okay?
Nolan Arenado, I don't know.
No, that's a loaded question.
I mean,
No, we're
how
not.
much time do you have? So they're the most bet players to win NL MVP this season. As you can see, obviously Shohei Ohtani. Over on the other side, they're just a little bit further away from those other dudes. Anyway, welcome to The Sweat, presented by DraftKings. Jesse Cofield, Emerson Latzia here with you this morning. NHL, NBA, XFL, and EPL coming up, but obviously we're going to start here.
That's right, because in just a few hours, folks, the sounds of bats cracking, gloves popping, pitching timers ticking, and players sliding into bigger bases will fill the air. So let's dive into some opening day best bets with three of my favorites. DraftKings contributors, Gary Thornton, Steve Buchanan, RotoWire's Eric Halterman. So we're looking at a few of the games here on the night slate, guys. So not necessarily the ones that start here in a couple hours. Let's go with the Jose Altuve-less Astros beginning their World Series title defense, hosting the White Sox. So, Bukes, what is your favorite bet here, dude?
Yeah, I like taking the under through the first 5 innings of this one at 3.5 runs, getting even money on that one there. The White Sox, one of the best under teams through the first 5 innings last season. They were 84, 65, and 13 in that scenario. I've obviously had to do with that dopey manager, Tony La Russa, but we don't have to worry about that anymore, right? It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. But look, Dylan Cease really settles in nicely as the game gets further into action. 1.44 ERA with a 2.22 WOBA allowed against him the second time through the order. Then you got Valdez going on the other side for the Astros, just an absolute ground ball specialist, and do a 67% ground ball rate last year that you have to imagine that was one of the best in the league overall. This doesn't feel like there's a lot of runs to be had, especially early with these two aces on the mound. We could see that really across the league today with the majority of your top pitchers going today. So give me under 3.5 runs for the first 5 innings in that game.
All right, Gary, what do you think here? Because even with Altuve's sideline, Houston's lineup here, Maldonado, Abreu, Bregman, Brantley, McCormick, Tucker, Alvarez.
It's a good lineup. I'm actually going to go with a prop bet sort of inspired by something Eric said yesterday. So hat tip to Eric on this one.
Nice job, Eric.
I'm going to go with Framber Valdez over 5.5 hits allowed at plus 125. This is a bet I kind of liked last season anyway. I mean, Valdez, it's funny. He's almost so good. He helps this bet hit more often than not because he works so deep into games that some of these opposing counting stats just pile up out of sheer volume. He doesn't walk a lot of guys. He's not a huge strikeout pitcher, so he doesn't do a lot of contact. And you would figure that with the shift restrictions, a couple more of those ground balls might squeak through the infield than we saw last season. So I think the White Sox are also fully healthy. They're a team that even without Jose Abreu should hit left-handed pitching really, really well, just like they've done the past half decade. Even Elvis Andrus, who they picked up in this offseason, had a 139 WRC plus against Southpaws last season. So I think the White Sox can get 6 hits off of Framber Valdez, even if they're not scoring a bunch of runs tonight.
Eric, what's your bet here in White Sox Astros tonight?
Yeah, I talked yesterday how about I just like the White Sox in this one, and I still do. It seems like a lot of people have, and the line has actually shifted. It's now White Sox plus 130. I think it was plus 135 last night, maybe even plus 140. And this game epitomizes the effects of the new shift. We're going to find out. Obviously, we're not going to find out in one game, but this is where it's going to show up. It not only did Framber Valdez have the highest ground ball rate last season, it was by far the highest among starting pitchers by over 10 percentage points, or just shy of 10 percentage points, sorry, 9.8. Point is, it's his main skill by a ton. That's what he does. He keeps the ball on the ground. That's still useful, but it's not as useful as it was last season. Whereas Dylan Cease on the other side, below average ground ball rate, he is all about the strikeout. In fact, he also has control problems, so he really is all about the strikeout. That's the kind of pitcher that I'm going to lean on a little more heavily at the start of this season until we get some actual data on how much the shift is going to affect us. I'm just going to avoid the really strong ground ball guys and push up the really high strikeout, not necessarily high ground ball guys.
All right, fellas, AL MVP favorite Shohei Ohtani getting the start in Oakland, going against Kyle Muller here. Just 7 runs for this total. I mean, Ohtani could cover the team totals by himself. 4.5 for the Angels, keeping the A's under 2.5. Garion, what's a bet you like in this one? We've talked about how abysmal we think the Athletics are going to be this year.
Yeah, I mean, yesterday I said I could maybe see the Athletics winning 51 or fewer games, and I also had an Angels future to possibly win the World Series. So I think these two teams are pretty far apart when it comes to talent level. Oakland's going to face this problem a lot this season. And one of the reasons they're so underwhelming from a season-long perspective is just how underwhelming their starting rotation is. And it's obviously even more underwhelming when Paul Blackburn is on the IL and you've got to start Kyle Muller in your opening day game of the 2023 season. Muller's got some prospect pedigree. He's got a decent fastball, don't get me wrong, but has always had control issues. Career 13% walk rate in his cup of coffee at the major league level. Also has an ERA over 5 in that span of time. This is someone who in spring training gave up 30 hits in 18 innings. Like, it's not even like he was pitching well in March, and that's the reason they gave him this start. It's just purely the fact they have no one else. And he's going up against Shohei Ohtani, not only on the opposing mound, but in the opposing batter's box. The Angels are healthy. I think that's so key for the Angels. I really do think Anthony Rendon can have a bounce-back season this year. So I'm just going to take the Angels on the run line at -120. I think they are significantly better than Oakland on a regular day. And on days when Shohei Ohtani is taking the mound, they are especially better.
Eric, you in agreement on that one?
Yeah, you almost have to get creative to find an interesting bet on this one, given how much of a favorite the Angels justifiably are. I think some bets that look interesting, maybe the under 7 runs. It's low scoring, but don't think Ohtani's giving up many. And that park is extremely pitcher friendly. And, you know, with Oakland at least having their A bullpen, whatever that A bullpen is, it's not exactly other teams' best bullpens, but they should all be rested today. Maybe this score finishes, 5-1, 4-2, somewhere in that range. Might even go Angels -2.5, -3.5, just to get some interesting payouts, as I think if this is the game that really could be a blowout. I also like maybe Shohei Ohtani going under half an earned run. I believe it's at +145. He might throw 5-6 shutout innings, or the team might just not ask him to do all that much coming out of a spring where he, was away at the WBC. Through, I believe, less than 10 innings over there. Might not be fully in rhythm the way he would be in a normal season, although obviously from a competitive standpoint, that was great prep. There's a chance they only ask him to go 4, and I kind of doubt the Athletics are scoring 1 run every 4 innings off Ohtani.
Steve, did you have to get creative here, maybe go with a player prop?
I'm going with the team total through the first 5 innings. The Angels team total is set at 2.5 runs. You're getting +130 on the over for that one. We mentioned Kyle Muller's taking the mound for the Athletics here. He's pitched 2 years in the majors now with the Braves before being traded over. Just hasn't figured it out. He's been a great pitcher in the minors, hasn't translated to the major leagues, has had a walk per 9 inning of over 5. A 5.14 ERA and a 4.05 FIP through 49 innings up in the major league. Angels admittedly aren't great against lefties, but Muller's also been getting lit up during spring training. Pitched 5 games, had an ERA of over 6.5 already. I can't imagine he's going to go out here, figure it out on opening day against this Angels team that a lot of people are giving a lot of love to this before the season begins here. We'll see how that pans out. I feel like we've gone through this before, so we'll see how it turns out with the Angels. But if there's one thing I can't imagine on opening day with my hard-earned money, I'm going to put any type of money on the Oakland Athletics to start it off. We always talk about bankroll management. Here's a tip. Don't bet on the Oakland Athletics, especially on opening day.
Okay,
All right.
We'll take that to heart.
Yes, we will.
Thank you.
Another California baseball team. We got the Dodgers leading all of baseball last year with 111 wins in the regular season. However, they've seen some key pieces here depart in the offseason. You can get LA +125 now on the run line versus the Diamondbacks, who yesterday, Steve, you mentioned how much they've improved in the offseason. So where's your move on the DK Sportsbook tonight for this one?
Yeah, I like taking Zach Gallen to go over 5.5 strikeouts tonight. You're getting that at plus 105. Feels like a pretty strong number for someone who's gone over, who has at least 6 strikeouts in 17 of the 31 starts that he made last season. That counts for half of the season that he pitched last year. One of those games, he struck out 13 Dodgers in a late September start that we saw. You look at the bottom half of that Dodgers lineup, there's a lot of strikeout-prone guys that are going to be down there with Max Muncy, Chris Taylor, Miguel Vargas, who looks like he's going to be the starting second baseman after Gavin Lux went down with that ACL tear. So I think there's a good number here on Zach Gallen to go over that strikeout prop today, getting plus money on that one. So I think that's a really nice play in this one here. Because quite frankly, if I'm being perfectly honest, this is a pretty even pitching matchup. And the line really kind of reflects that. The Dodgers are a bit heavy favorites in here. I don't think I want to lay minus 170 with Julio Urias against the Diamondbacks because, like I said, I think the Diamondbacks have improved, and I think we're going to see that as the season goes on. So I think this is actually a closer matchup than it is. So if you want to take I don't hate taking the Diamondbacks on the money line either. I think this is a pretty even matchup.
All right, Eric, what's your move here? Because Steve's right. Gallen had a 0.64 ERA in his 2 starts against the Dodgers last year.
Yeah, I'm in alignment with Steve here. I think you could definitely look at Arizona as the underdogs plus 145. I think Arizona is a team that's on the rise. If we're talking about teams that could suddenly do, say, what the Orioles did last year and just get almost there a year before they're really supposed to, I think Arizona's probably the best bet with Corbin Carroll leading a bunch of young hitters. The pitching is coming along, maybe not quite there, but Zach Gallen is absolutely there. I don't think they're really giving up much in the pitching matchup here with Gallen versus Urias. The one thing that gives me pause for taking Arizona is that young outfield, which is so exciting, of Corbin Carroll, Alec Thomas, and Jake McCarthy. They're all left-handed, so maybe I don't love Arizona as much against lefties this year. Still plus 145 I think is okay. I don't think it's a steal. I think it's fair. But maybe just the under here, under 7.5 runs, because Gallen is so good. I think he's going to do his part keeping a slightly diminished Dodgers lineup down, and I am more confident in him doing his part than the Arizona hitters doing their part. So maybe that just says, let's expect a low-scoring game. Not entirely sure if it's 4-3 Dodgers way or 4-3 Diamondbacks way.
Gary, and if the Diamondbacks can knock off the Dodgers tonight, it would be just their 3rd win in the last 15 games in LA.
Yeah, not a great trend, but says a lot about where these two franchises have been the last 3 seasons. I'm with these guys. I think the Diamondbacks on the money line is a pretty solid bet for a lot of the reasons they've already laid out. Gallen, second half of last season, a 1.49 ERA backed up by a 2.07 FIP, had a strikeout rate above 31% in that span of time. I, like Eric, have some hesitation about the fact they are facing a very talented left-handed pitcher tonight. Obviously, the Diamondbacks by WRC Plus were one of the worst lineups in baseball against Southpaws last season, and a big reason for that was just they happened to have one of the most left-handed lineups in all of baseball. But you would hope the presence of Lourdes Gurriel, Evan Longoria, maybe even Kyle Lewis is like a platoon bat for them. Well, that kind of remains to be seen. But they at least have right-handed bats who have a bit of a pedigree at being good against left-handed pitching. So I think they should improve even marginally within that split. So with Zach Gallen on the mound, I'm willing to take them at plus 145.
All right, finally, we get to a good one, the one Steve's been waiting for, the Seattle Fighting Buchanans and the Guardians, Shane Bieber and Louis Castillo on their respective mounds. These teams have pretty similar season outlooks. Steve admitted yesterday Castillo usually starts the season pretty slowly here, but Bieber's K rate has continued to dip in each of the last few seasons. So, Eric, what's your favorite bet in this game? 2 similar teams. Is it going to be a pitcher's edge in this game?
Yeah, I think this one's going to be really tight. I think you could take the under again, given how strong these pitchers are, also given how much of a pitcher's park we have in Seattle. But one of the bets that looks interesting to me is the Guardians on the run line. Guardians minus 1.5 is plus 190 right now. So Guardians just need to win by 2 or more, and you get quite a good payout there. The reason why I think that's so high is because, again, this game should be so low scoring. I think these teams are going to keep it tight because we also have excellent bullpens. You could absolutely picture one team going up by 1 run and just turning it over to their top relievers and the score staying 3-2 the rest of the way. So I think I'm torn between that Guardians on the run line and the under here, because again, I think the odds reflect that it should be low scoring and close. I actually think it should be a little bit more tilted towards the Guardians than they say, but I'm not sure if anybody's going to be able to get a 2-run lead. That's why that payout is so high.
Gary, and perhaps not as tilted toward the Guardians because of Castillo's ridiculous numbers at T-Mobile Park.
Yeah, he looked really good as a member of the Mariners last season. Both these pitchers are just so talented, so established in the league. You're paying a little juice for this one, but I also just want to have one of these bets on opening day. It's everyone's favorite. Let's go no run in the first for this contest for a lot of the reasons Eric was outlining there. This is just a fantastic pitching matchup. And if you want some stats that specifically back up no run in the first, Shane Bieber was otherworldly last season, first time through the batting order, had an ERA well below 2, held opponents to a 227 WOBA the first time they saw him in a start last season. On the other side, Luis Castillo, a 2.47 ERA, his first 2 trips through an opposing lineup. Before that ERA jumped up over 4 the third time through. I just think it's really hard to get these guys, even with your best hitters at the top of those lineups. Plus, these are 2 pretty similar teams. I think the Mariners did get better offensively this offseason, but these were 2 of the teams that were constantly just playing in like 2-1, 3-2 games last season. It's kind of their MO, and I think it carries over to at least in the start of this season.
Steve, I know you're giving your boys the edge here.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a very good pitching matchup here, and this obviously has one of the lowest totals on the board. And I'm gonna take the under in this one here. I mean, these guys have pretty much explained why the under is likely to play in this one, even at that total of 6.5. I did mention yesterday, Luis Castillo historically is a slow starting pitcher. He kind of builds up as the season goes on. His ERA in the month of March/April is over 4.5, which is not a great number here. But I don't think that the Guardians are going to be able to scratch a ton across the board here, even if Castillo is struggling a bit. Then on the other side, Shane Bieber is not that elite strikeout guy he once was, but he's getting outs efficiently with the defense behind him because he has a very good defensive team behind him. So even though it's a very low total, I think under 6.5 is the play for this game here. I think we're going to see a really good pitching matchup here tonight.
All right, gentlemen, appreciate the help. Happy opening day. And for everybody watching, you need a little more assistance during the season? Of course you do. Check out the Major League Baseball betting guide that our friends at VSiN put out. So head over to vsin.com/subscribe. The guides are only for subscribers, so you can get on board. $9.99. Then you get the guide and all the other great shows, articles, and resources that they offer every single day.
Good stuff. We talked about it on Monday, coming off the Elite 8 games. So if you missed it, here's a little refresher on where our own Julian Edlow is leading for the Final Four on Saturday. Take a look.
All right, let's do a little Final Four breakdown. Start with the early game, the more unlikely Final Four matchup. Florida Atlantic and San Diego State, 9 seed and a 5 seed. Here we are playing in Houston for the Final Four. I haven't bet a side in this one. I do lean to San Diego State, and the reason being 3-point defense. That's what would put me over the edge in this game. The 3-point average in the tournament for all teams is 31%. FAU in the Sweet 16 and Elite 8 shot 17 of 50 from downtown. That's exactly 34%, a little bit better than average, but they take a lot of them. They like to shoot these 3-pointers. Meanwhile, San Diego State in their Sweet 16 and Elite 8 games in elite competition against Creighton and Alabama held those two offenses to 5 of 44 from deep. So San Diego State shuts these teams out from downtown, and I think that's what would be the difference in this one. The bet that I have made is under 61.5 in the first half of this game. I've been riding the San Diego State first half unders, bet it against Creighton, bet it against Bama. They like to play their pace out of the gates in these games, and I think we'll see it once again. Florida Atlantic, similar matchup against Tennessee. That game was played to Tennessee's pace in the first half, 27-22, before the Owls broke out in the second half. In the nightcap, Miami against UConn. The Huskies are the best team left in this tournament, and it's not even close. So I expect them to advance. Miami playing really well on offense, but they're below 100 in KenPom defensively. So they gave up 81 to Texas in that win on Sunday. So I've bet UConn team total over 77.5. I think they're going to put up a lot of points in this game against the Hurricanes. And my best bet overall is just UConn to win the tournament. -125. I think UConn's going to win both of these games and cut down the nets in Houston. They're the most balanced team. They have size, depth, and they're going to play defense. That's going to be the difference in this tournament.
There is an 11-game slate this evening in the NHL, and you are looking at the top 5 priced dudes for DFS. Connor McDavid at 10-2.
Yeah!
Breaking the 10K threshold, baby. Then we got 9.8, moving down into the 8s. So not too crazy. But are any of these guys a must play? DraftKings contributor Jeff Orrick and NHL.com's Pete Jensen are here to answer that and more. Fellas, thank you for being here.
Come on, Oilers. Let's go, baby. All right, Jeff.
Okay.
Jeff, big slate. Big slate, as Jesse just pointed out. Lots of options in DFS. You saw the high-priced guys. But
Connor
talk
McDavid,
to me
10-2.
about value, because people are going to need to save some bucks if they stuff some of these studs inside their lineup.
Yeah, and you better get stuffing tonight, because, I mean, the Oilers and Kings is a 7 total attached to it. That game's going to see some goals. Phoenix Copley better watch out, or wherever they're starting. Look, let's start with the Oilers for some value. Let's go to defense. Evan Bouchard, 3,900, basically a cheat code at that price. Yes, Tyson Barrie no longer on the Edmonton Oilers. Bouchard anchoring their power play 1. This is a very talented, still underrated player, in my opinion, getting plenty of opportunity. He's averaging a point per game over his last 10 games. Bouchard is just producing. And yeah, maybe those ceiling games haven't come yet, but in his range of outcomes, he can absolutely hit you the shot on goal bonus. He can get you the block shot bonus. He's playing more. Evan Bouchard at 3,900 is a perfect person to start lineups with, because he correlates well with Connor McDavid or Leon Draisaitl if you use them, and he saves you a ton of money. So value, we're going Bouchard to start off, anchor that blue line, get some extra salary to give yourselves more room.
All right, Pete, Jeff says you got to get stuffing, but talk to me first about a value play, because if you're going to get stuffing, you need someone to kind of sprinkle in as a value.
So one team I'm looking at a lot for offense is the Florida Panthers, and there's a guy that I think you should get to know the name, Eetu Luostarinen. He's a secondary scorer for this team. He has 19 points in his past 23 games, and I think he's a big reason why they've been able to withstand all these different injuries, right? Like Barkov has missed some time. He's playing great now that he's healthy, but they're still without Sam Bennett. Duclair has had a slow start since missing so much time. But Luostarinen sees a lot of exposure to either Matthew Tkachuk or Barkov, or even on that second line, he still sees exposure to Brandon Montour, who's a top 10 defenseman in this league when they play at even strength together and sometimes on the power play. So that's just one guy that I feel like is relatively unknown in the grand scheme of things that has really been charging up and is a big reason that the Florida Panthers are still in playoff contention. That was a clutch win for them in the later stages of the game on Wednesday at Toronto, and I think it showed that there's a lot of fight left in this team.
All right, now let's talk about a position you may want to go to the top of the board for.
Oh.
The position that you may need to stuff into your lineup. Pete, are you paying up at center? Connor McDavid, 10-2. He produced 3 power play assists in Tuesday's win over the Golden Knights. I think it was the first time he didn't record a point, though, since like April 22nd
Yeah, you know what? He's
2022
human.
or
He's
something.
human. It's okay.
Yeah, he'll bounce back, and the good way to tap into him is his frequent line mate, power play running mate, the whole bit, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. So he's on the cusp of 100 points. He's got 96 with a few games to go, so I think he's going to get there. He's only 6,800 RNH, and it's amazing that he was a former first overall pick himself about a decade ago, and now we're starting to see him join the conversation with his own teammates, right? It's always McDavid and Draisaitl near the top or at the top of the league leaderboard in points, and now RNH is right there. And we were looking back in the history books yesterday about the significance of this. The last team with 300-point scorers on the same team was the 95-96 Pittsburgh Penguins when it was Yager, Lemieux, and Ron Francis. It's about to be McDavid, Draisaitl, and Nugent-Hopkins here. Pretty amazing price and bang for your buck in DraftKings.
Jeff, I know as an Edmonton Oilers stan that you're going to be putting Connor McDavid in your lineup.
You know, you can, but I prefer Leon Draisaitl.
Okay.
I really do. Evander Kane is absolutely. People just forgot Evander Kane was on the Edmonton Oilers. It feels like because he missed so much time with injury. Was just absolutely on fire, Evander Kane, this last game. But Leon Draisaitl obviously playing alongside Evander Kane, going to benefit from that. Multiple points now in each of his last 3 games. Draisaitl's only 8,300, and if you start with Draisaitl again, you get much of the same benefits. You can pair him with Bouchard, get the power play exposure, and then you can pair him with Evander Kane, who, like I said, playing out of his mind. I also just like this matchup better for Draisaitl. The Kings do have kind of a shutdown number 1 center. Not that Anze Kopitar at this point is going, not that anyone is going to shut down Connor McDavid, but it's just a better spot, I think, for Draisaitl to get better matchups against the Kings. So Draisaitl, Kane, I'd kind of be targeting that line if you force me to choose. And the price difference between these two players is just too big for me to ignore. So prefer Draisaitl. Also, shout out to Sebastian Aho tonight at 6,500. Way too cheap. Definitely some multiple point upside there.
All right, so then in the wings and things department, Jeff, who's looking tasty to you? You got Pasta. Speaking of tasty, $1,000 more than the next dude down the board with just Matthew Tkachuk.
Yeah, I mean, again, like if you can get David Pastrnak into your lineup with some Oilers exposure, have at it. But there are some very fairly priced wingers here that I need to talk about. Alex DeBrincat at 5,800, taking on the Flyers. Ottawa's been so good at home this season. DeBrincat's still shooting about 3 to 4% under his career average. He's got 3 goals in his last 3 games, though. Philadelphia's a bottom 10 penalty kill. The Senators' power play, top 10 in the league, essentially. I think DeBrincat's in a really good spot tonight. A player who can definitely get you the shot on goal bonus as well, and a goal. And then in that Montreal game, I kind of like the Canadians tonight. What have we seen from the Panthers? Terrible on the road, terrible in back-to-back situations as well. Raphael Harvey-Pinard, only 5,300. This guy's been on absolute fire, too. He's playing around 20 minutes a night. Top line power play, top line along Nick Suzuki. I think both of those players under 6K gives you really, really good upside and to let you fit in a lot of those high-priced centers.
All right, Pete.
Yeah, so I was actually just looking. So Nugent Hopkins, who I mentioned earlier, is technically a left wing for tonight. He plays a lot of center as well, so it's one of those tricky situations. I mentioned I really like him from the Oilers, but if I wanted to give you a center that has also been producing at a very high level, Tim Stützle, and he's center eligible. He has been on a tear in the month of March for the Senators, and that's a guy that I would get into my lineup to complement Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. And Stützle, for a non-contending team, you could say, has really had a full-fledged breakout this season, regardless of line mates, regardless of who's been injured around him. It's been remarkable to watch him, and he might be the single player in the league that has gained the most fantasy value in keeper leagues with what he has put forth this season. So I just wanted to give a shout out to those two guys, Nugent Hopkins and Stützle, and how I'm building my lineup around them, regardless of their centers or wings on any given night.
All right, to the blue line we go. So Pete, are you going to pay up here or save some cash?
I'm saving some cash. I'm looking at Sean Durzi for the LA Kings. He came back the other day, had 2 assists, and then he scored a big goal for them in the game against Calgary. And he had 7 blocked shots against Calgary. So Durzi and the Kings are one of the deepest teams in the entire league, offensively speaking. They also have Drew Doughty on that blue line, of course. And they made some big upgrades at the deadline that I really like. Their goaltender, Korpisalo. I think they might have the second best goalie tandem in the Western Conference, maybe behind Minnesota. But Durzi is going to just take that blue line to another level for the postseason, whether they match up against Vegas or Edmonton. And this is a potential playoff preview tonight. So I just like what Durzi has brought to the table all season long on the second power play, and then coming back with a bang here the past couple of games from injury.
Jeff, you on the same page? You can save a little bit of money on the blue line?
I mean, I mentioned Evan Bouchard, so definitely, I mean, I think you use one of your slots to try and get some value, whether it's Durzi, whether it's Bouchard. You could go 2, but there's some players up above that I like the upside with. Alex Pietrangelo, 6,800. Shea Theodore looks like he's going to miss this game. Just means Pietrangelo is going to play more. And, I mean, he's been so consistent. The block shot bonus and the shots on goal bonus always on the table with him. And look, Vegas got absolutely, pantsed in their last game. I mean, they got embarrassed, and now they get the San Jose Sharks as a rebound team here. I mean, this one could get ugly. So Pietrangelo, multi-point upside here as well. Always that's always on the table with him, especially against a team like the Sharks. I think at 6,800 with Theodore out, you'll just see a little bit more minutes played, give you a better shot at getting the bonus there. So I really like him. And Justin Falk as well. Very affordable in my opinion. Been playing more 5,600. The Blues match up against the Blackhawks here. Again, team that allows a lot of shots on net. The Blues could put up 5 goals here. Falk could get another point or two. So Justin Falk also in play for me.
All right, Pete, your job here is done. Great seeing you as always. Jeff, please hang out because we're going to team you up with Pierce Dietrich for a fun little XFL segment. Yeah. But right now, we got 2 of the best college basketball teams going at it. No, we're not talking about on the men's side in the Final Four. We're talking about the women's side. Ooh. South Carolina will take on Iowa. This one is going to be ridiculous to watch. And Golic and Smetty are talking about it a little more, right? Meow.
I mean, what is going to go on with Caitlin Clark from Iowa, who is unbelievable. She is so much fun to watch against undefeated South Carolina. Where are they at, 40 now from last year to this year?
30. They're 40 in a row,
40
or
in a
41 in a row,
something
but
like
this
that.
year they're like 35 and 0.
Yes.
They haven't lost this entire season. Their last loss was in the SEC championship game last year.
Made the run then and won the title, and now looking to do it again back to back. Yeah.
I don't know if you watched any of the Maryland South Carolina game that was on Monday night, but South Carolina is so tall. They play great defense. Aaliyah Boston's a National Player of the Year candidate. She won it last year. She's an amazing player, probably the best in college basketball right now. She gets like doubled every single game, and she's incredibly talented. So that matchup with Iowa, who's got one of the hottest shooters I think that we maybe have seen ever, or at least in a long time in college basketball, is going to be a crazy matchup.
You mentioned from the National Player of the Year candidate from South Carolina. They have stars
Leah
there.
Boston,
but Caitlin Clark has just been incredible. So to have that star power and that team against this juggernaut right now, at least from last year and this year, of what South Carolina is doing, I know my buddy Darius Rucker has to be pretty happy in what's going on here. But that's kind of the power game, right? From both Final Fours, and that's the one I'm looking forward to.
Well. Thursday's NBA slate.
Damn,
looking
look
a
at
little
this.
slim here. Celtics at Bucks, Pelicans at Nuggets, and that's it. That's all she wrote. So 2 games, 2 dudes on our NBA panel. DraftKings contributor Jeff Pratt and RotoWire's Nick Whalen, thank you for being here. Just 2 games, but a lot of star power, okay? Wow. So, Jeff, best DFS play tonight. Where are you going?
Yeah, first off, I think it's worth noting that this just isn't a great DFS slate. Obviously, you have 2 matchups on this slate, but the Bucks, Celtics, Pelicans, and Nuggets are all pretty tough defensively. They don't allow many fantasy points across the board, so you really have to pick your spots. I look at the top 3 options on the board: Jokic, Giannis, and Tatum. If I have to pick one, it would probably be Jokic, assuming he plays. But that being said, I'm actually going to skip all 3 of them and focus on the 4th highest priced player on this slate, who is Brandon Ingram. And there's a considerable price drop from Jason Tatum to him, but I honestly think you could be looking at similar production from them. Ingram has been a beacon of consistency for the Pelicans lately, pretty much in all facets of the game: points, rebounds, assists. He's really ramped up his overall production. He scored 46 plus fantasy points in 4 of his last 5 games. The Nuggets aren't as good defensively against opposing wings as other teams on this slate. So this is a good spot for him to keep it rolling.
All right, Nick, what are you thinking here? Best DFS play? Jeff told us it's not a very good DFS slate, but where are you going?
It's not a great DFS slate, and I'm worried that by the time, 7 o'clock Eastern rolls around, it could be even worse. Nikola Jokic is currently questionable right now. Really poor scheduling by the NBA here. Denver's on the front end of a back-to-back. Milwaukee is on the back end of a back-to-back. These should be huge games, and yet I'm not 100% confident that Giannis is playing tonight. You can say the same thing about Jrue Holiday, who, of course, had 51 last night. We'll see about Jokic. I think he plays either tonight or tomorrow. Would be surprised if he plays both. So bottom line is you need to make sure that all these guys are playing before you lock in your lineup. With that in mind, I know we're going to talk about the superstars later. I like Jaylen Brown tonight at 8,600 as kind of a secondary option to pair with one of those guys. You won't find him under 9,000 all that often, so I think we're getting a bargain here. Keep in mind, he was the best player in the series against Milwaukee last year in the playoffs. I thought he was the Celtics' best player for a lot of that postseason, if we're being honest. He had a 64 DraftKings point game earlier this week, so that's the kind of upside that he's capable of. And yes, this is a Bucks team, we think of them as, kind of this great defensive team with Drew and Brooke and Giannis, and that's true. But they also play really quickly, and they allowed 136 points to the Indiana Pacers last night. So second night of a back-to-back for Milwaukee. I think there's going to be some points to be had here for the Boston Celtics.
That was a historic night for Holiday and Giannis, too. Just the third duo ever to post at least 85 points, 25 boards, 20 assists in a game. So, yeah, maybe if he plays, you'll have to pay up for Giannis here, Nick. I mean, there's Tatum, there's Jokic. Mm-hmm. There's not a lot to choose from. So where's the value?
Yeah, I mean, if you're just, like, let's say you don't have time to check your lineup later, you're popping out a flight or something. Tatum's the guy I would feel most comfortable locking in right now. However, if we're assuming that all three of these guys played, then I would lean toward Jokic. He's only $200 more expensive than Giannis, and I think he has a better matchup, certainly, against the New Orleans Pelicans, and I think he has a higher night-to-night floor. I mean, we saw Giannis go for, 80 DraftKings points last night. Like, we know he has that ceiling. He and Jokic on their best night have probably about the same ceiling, but on average, Jokic tends to give you those 60, 70-point nights more often than Giannis. So if I had to just choose one of those guys, and we're assuming all three plays, I'd go Jokic.
Okay, Jeff, give me a value play then.
Al Horford's playing against the Bucks, so that's my pick. This is very much a situation where if you know, Al Horford loves to play against Milwaukee. He really shows up for this game. For these games. I think that the specific play that comes to mind is when he dunked on Giannis in the Eastern Conference Finals last season, then hit him with the swinging elbow. After that, it was a huge momentum shifter for that series. But, he's called the Giannis stopper for a reason. He's been doing this for a while. And obviously, he does not actually stop Giannis. No one stops Giannis Antetokounmpo. But he does contain him about as well as anyone we have seen. And he scored double-digit points in 4 of his last 5 regular season meetings between these teams. From a DFS standpoint, he's racked up 19-plus points in 6 straight matchups. One major thing to note is Rob Williams is questionable for this game, and so is Grant Williams, as a matter of fact. If he sits, specifically Rob, Horford becomes an obvious play at 5K, but even if Rob suits up, I'd still roll with Al.
All right, guys, well, it may not be a great DFS slate, but we can always find a great bet, can't we? Yes, we can.
Oh my God, yes.
Jeff, what's yours for Celtics Bucks?
Yeah, I'm looking at a couple of player props here. The first is Giannis rebounds. Obviously, as Nick said, there is a slight chance that Giannis doesn't play tonight. I think that if the Celtics hadn't gotten steamrolled by the Wizards, this would be a must-win game for Milwaukee. But at this point, it's going to be pretty hard for the Celtics to surpass the Bucks for the 1 seed. So there's a chance that Antetokounmpo sits. But if he does play, his line's currently set at 12.5. I feel like that might be a little too high, so I wait to see what the alternates look like at 11 plus or even 12 plus. But if Rob Williams sits specifically and Giannis plays, I would take a look at 12.5 much more seriously. The Celtics take a lot of threes. That's a lot of uncontested rebound opportunities for opposing teams. And then the other player prop I like, which isn't hinging on injury news, is Marcus Smart over 4.5 assists. It feels like Smart has definitely taken a step back in terms of his overall game this year, specifically defensively. He's just not been as stout in that aspect of his game, but he's quietly having the best playmaking season of his career, averaging 6.3 assists per game. He's hit that total in 5 of his last 6 games. He's racked up at least 6 dimes in 5 straight regular season meetings against Milwaukee. So things are trending in the right direction for this matchup.
All right, Nick, what are you rolling with?
Oh, I would think about locking in Celtics +2 right now under the belief that maybe Giannis and or Drew end up sitting this game. And we'll see. I mean, they have player props listed on DraftKings right now. That's a good sign as far as kind of where the market is leaning. But in case that happens, you're obviously going to see that number move quite a bit. So I'd think about that. And like Jeff alluded to, this is not a must-win game for the Bucks by any means. It's a game that they should want to win, but they could still lock up the number 1 seed by going 5-0 or 4-1 down the stretch, regardless of what the Celtics do if Milwaukee loses this game. And obviously, if Boston loses any of its final 5 games, it becomes exponentially easier for Milwaukee to get that one. So I don't think there's this major pressure for Milwaukee to play all of its guys 40 minutes and win this game. Beyond that, a couple other player props. Chris Middleton, he should play tonight, didn't play last night. Over 1.5 made threes. I like that a lot. Not a ton of value there, but especially if one of those other 2 guys doesn't play, I think that's close to a lock. I would look at some Javon Carter props if you can find them. I know they're not up now. Again, this would be based on Drew Holiday not playing. He's been fantastic even with Holiday in the lineup. But when Holiday sits, his numbers go up quite a bit. And then on the Boston side, Jaylen Brown over 26.5 points. Talked about him in the last segment. The Bucks number 1 in pace by a mile over the last 10 games. And even though the defensive rating looks okay, they're still allowing 120 points per game, which is bottom 5 in the league over the last 10.
All right, Nick, take me to your favorite bet here for Pelicans and Nuggets. Pelicans had that epic collapse against the Warriors just a couple nights ago.
That was ugly, man. And it was ugly for the Pelicans, but it was also kind of a reminder of like, wow, okay, the Warriors still have that gear when they need it. I mean, that was last year's Warriors. I love the Nuggets here if Jokic plays. I really don't trust this Pelicans team. They're just kind of missing something without Zion. I don't know if it's that simple, but like you said, we just saw them wilt a couple nights ago. I also like Trey Murphy over 15.5 points tonight. Nobody really talks about Trey Murphy with this team, but he has been rock solid in his second NBA season. I think he's kind of one of those guys that we have to start thinking about, like, could he have a Mikal Bridges type of trajectory when we look back 2 or 3 years from now? He has been awesome for them, averaging almost 20 points per game, 19.7 to be exact, over his last 13. He's playing a ton of minutes every single night. He's one of the best three-point shooters in the league. And if you're talking DFS, he's one of those guys. He has 2 30-plus point games in his last 10. Like, he has that kind of upside in the DFS world as well.
All right, Pelicans finishing off 4-game road trip here. Jeff, what's your bet?
Yeah, I think Nick and I are actually on opposite pages with this
Nice.
game. I understand that the Pelicans just collapsed against the Warriors, but that'll happen. The Warriors they know how to win big games at home. Are we just going to forget about the Sixers almost blowing a lead to, oh my goodness, who was it? They just almost blew a lead, not the Sixers, sorry. The Nuggets almost blew a lead to the Sixers without Joel Embiid or James Harden in the matchup. That's what it was. They played horrible in that game. So regardless of if Nikola Jokic suits up tonight, I'm just going to take New Orleans to cover. The line's at 6 as we speak. I wouldn't be opposed to taking New Orleans on the money line either. I understand this is the last game of a road trip, so we'll stick to the spread right now. But the Pels have covered in 5 of their last 6 games. Obviously, that one game they did not cover was an ugly one, but they've won as many games over that stretch as well. And then on Denver's side, this is pretty classic letdown territory. Now, if we were talking about the Nuggets of a couple of months ago when they were steamrolling teams and looked like the best team in the West by a large margin, I would be hesitant to take this. But they have not looked like a top 3, maybe even a top 5 team in the NBA over the last few months. They have won 4 straight games, but they didn't play well whatsoever against that Philly team with no Embiid, no Harden. I really like how New Orleans matches up against the Nuggets. They've got the size to give Jokic trouble with Jonas Valanciunas. They're really long defensively. They've got versatile players who are capable of handling pretty much any type of switch Denver would throw at them. And they also have the offensive firepower to keep up with the Nuggets. So I think New Orleans is going to make this a game.
All right, good stuff, guys. That'll do it for this teeny tiny NBA slate. Obviously, opening day in Major League Baseball. So earlier in the show, we heard from Steve about some of the games on tonight's slate. But who's a dark horse underdog that he think could make an impact this year, maybe surprise people? Well, Jared Carrabis joined him on Unreasonable Odds to discuss a few undervalued teams heading into the season.
All right, I want to talk about a couple teams that I also think could be undervalued this year. Red Sox being one of them. They have an over-under win total, I think it's 78.5 as of today, which has actually gone up quite a few wins. I think a lot of people realize that this team is better than that win total is given. And quite frankly, you're still getting them as under a 500 team, which I still think there is some value there to take the over on that one there. I don't think they're going to be under 500. Do I think they're winning the division or anything? That might be a bit of a stretch, but I think they're a little bit undervalued. One team that I think is actually being very undervalued right now is Arizona Diamondbacks.
Why did I know that you were going to say that?
You know what? We just have this type of connection. I think, and it's just been we haven't had this opportunity to connect like this.
That's true.
But Arizona is sitting at 75.5 wins on the season. If you look at that lineup is low key a banger. Like, they got some legit guys, and with the rule changes that are coming about, there's some good speed guys on there. Corbin Carroll at the top, obviously got that huge extension. He's got some ridiculous speed. His average from home plate to first base was the second best in the league last year. It was just barely over 4 seconds, which is absolutely absurd. But obviously they play in one of the toughest divisions in the NL West when you have to contend with the Dodgers and Padres. No one's going to, bat an eye at you. That team is they're there. They're right there. I feel that the pitching is a problem, but other than that, they're right there. I feel like.
Yeah, and I think what's most interesting about the D-backs, so when we talk about some of these teams that annually are not necessarily contenders and they're not in the mix and they play in divisions that have juggernaut teams above them, we don't pay them any mind and we consider them a non-threat. We're not that far removed from the D-backs paying Zach Greinke to be, at the time, he was the highest paid pitcher in Major League Baseball history.
That hurts my head. Hurts my head.
Alrighty, we are now entering the XFL's home stretch here. Exciting time of the season, Jeff Ulrich and Pierce Dietrich. So this one will see 5 teams, at least currently 5 teams with records of 500 or better. Got a 3-day slate here in week 7. Let's do a little DFS and sportsbook preview for it, shall we?
We shall. So DiNucci and McCarron still at the top of the board for quarterbacks. Jeff, do you need to pay up for one of these dudes, or are you looking somewhere else? Like Emerson said, a couple of teams here above 500.
Ooh, above 500. Yeah,
nice.
Exciting.
Hey,
look,
easy.
Yeah, I think that the long-winded answer is there are players you can take a shot with. Brett Hundley potentially may get the start. You're gonna have to watch that news. I kind of like him at 9,400. He can run a little bit. He looked really good when he came in, or not really good. He looked better than Luis Perez, which isn't hard to do. But Hundley's got a legitimate NFL experience. I wouldn't hate him with Vegas at home this week. Jordan Tamu can run a bit, but I think the answer here is just play A.J. McCarron. I think A.J. McCarron is starting to figure out like he's the best quarterback in this league, and that this league isn't that hard to figure out. He's got multiple touchdowns in 4 straight games now. Turning the ball over a little bit, but no turnovers in his last game. He's got over 25 points in 2 of his last 4 games as well in the XFL. And look, I mean, they're going to be playing Houston on the road here. I think it's just a good upside spot for A.J. McCarron. I think that there's a chance that the Battlehawks will be down late in this game. It just means more pass attempts. Like the upside for McCarron, that is, if you got a single lineup, that's where you should be going. Don't get too fancy at quarterback because some of these guys, they just pull the quarterback so often, you may not even get a full game out of some of these guys.
Pierce, you want to pay up for McCarron here, or you want to get cute?
Hey, I'm not going to get cute. A.J. McCarron, like Jeff said, is the best quarterback in the league. And when this league closes out its season, we're probably going to be talking about McCarron winding up fighting for a backup position, maybe even a starting position in the NFL. He's been that good. I don't want to overreact to what he's done in a spring league, but you look at his last game, 23 completions and 29 attempts for 236 yards, 3 touchdowns to no picks, second most passing yards in fewer attempts. Ben DiNucci has better raw stats just because he gets more attempts, but McCarron has thrown half the interceptions that DiNucci has thrown. McCarron looks really good. He just keeps getting better. This team has actually played pretty well on the road. It is a tough matchup against Houston, who's one of the top teams, so they could be playing from behind, but St. Louis has been better on the road. And, you throw in the 2-point conversions, the 3-point conversions, playing from behind, which they likely will be. I like McCarron probably the safest and the best pick.
Pierce, who's your favorite running back this week? So Houston, D.C. have been scoring on the ground. You've already mentioned, Houston and St. Louis may be the game of the weekend, a couple 4-2 teams. Damn, D.C.'s 6-0. Oh, O-Town, the Guardians, completely winless.
Yeah, it's tough times for Orlando. So, if you're out in Orlando this weekend and trying to decide, do you want to go to Disney? Do you want to go to the million other things to do? Or do you want to go to a XFL game? Probably not going to go to that Orlando DC game.
Well, I don't know. It's much cheaper than Disney.
Well,
much cheaper.
About anything's probably cheaper than Disney. I mean, they get you in the door, and then that's when they really just start to. Anyway, I like Brian Hill. Brian Hill, as we mentioned a couple weeks ago, has a bit of chemistry with his teammate A.J. McCarron on St. Louis. They played together in Cincinnati. We're on the second string, and you can see it in the stats. He gets 4 to 5 targets every week, tends to catch all of those targets, so he gets you that receiving PPR. He's also one of the top rushers in the league. Yards per carry wise, he's above 5 yards per carry. We have seen him, and he's done that in 5 games as well, not just 6. He didn't play one of the games, so his numbers have increased. The team is relying on him a lot more. He's getting a lot more snaps. And he's not just some nobody. He was a 5th-round pick. He rushed for almost 2,000 yards in his final years at Wyoming. He is a very solid running back. Like McCarron,
who we could be talking about when preseason comes along. I'm sure he's going to sign with somebody, and he's going to be one of our preseason darlings. But Brian Hill gives you the PPR. I know the numbers aren't amazing, but we need to temper our expectations. You've only got a handful of games each week, and as opposed to like 15 games where in the NFL we see a ton of points get scored. So Brian Hill, although the numbers are eye-popping, they're pretty good for the XFL.
I cannot wait for Pierce to show up with his Guardians foam finger next week. Jeff, your top DFS XFL running back.
O-Town. Is that what they refer to?
That's what we refer to it, dude. I spent 5 years grinding away in college in that city.
I thought it was Magic City.
O-Town?
O-Town.
I've never heard that.
Orlando O-Town, not to be mixed up with O-Town the band.
I think that's a Florida thing. Just ignore him.
We're definitely losing viewers. Let's keep going here. Let's talk about O-Town, though, because Devin Darrington, we need to save some cash. Look, Devin Darrington came into the last game for the Guardians and put up some numbers here. 82 yards, averaged over 11 yards per carry. He's only 4,800. Yeah, the Guardians are 0-6, but they're going to be at home. They've looked a little bit better in their last 2 games. They've cut the deficits down. I think Darrington probably gets a shot here. This is a player who led, Harvard in all-purpose yards back in 2019. He's not super explosive, but again, I mean, Jermaine Martin has been pretty terrible for them. I can't see a scenario where Darrington doesn't lead them in touches out of the backfield here. If they jump on DC quick, I think you'll see Orlando probably go for a run-heavy plan anyways. Darrington, again, I mean, we need some kind of value here. I think he makes for a good flex option, or even just stick him in the RB and go, pay up for maybe all the Battlehawks receivers. We need cash to do that, because the Battlehawks receivers and even Brian Hill are very expensive. I think Darrington's a really good value here, and a player I expect to get a shot this week, just because what else do the Guardians have to lose? You might as well give the guy who averaged over 11 yards per carry a shot this week against DC.
Jeff, wide receiver, tight end, Cody Latimer, only 8K. He's been a smash play. Defenders, worst pass defense in the league. What do you think?
I mean, I chased Cody Latimer for a little bit, in the NFL DFS streets and in fantasy long leagues. I'm not going to go back there. I don't know how much cash you want to allocate to the Guardians pass game necessarily. I would rather just pay up for the Battlehawks receivers. We just finished talking about AJ McCarron. Darius Shepard, to me, probably the best upper tier sort of value-ish on the board. 8,300. Obviously, Hakeem Butler also part of the situation there. I think Shepard's just a better overall play. He's just a more consistent player. Butler definitely could flash with those long catches, but what have we seen from Shepard? Again, another player who he's got legitimate NFL experience. He's really been coming into his own to lay 2 touchdowns, obviously, in his last game. 2 of his last 3 games, we've seen 7 or more catches. So Shepard, to me, at 8,300, there's just such a big price difference between him and Butler. I think that, if you're looking to stack the Battlehawks, AJ McCarron, Darius Shepard, that's where you should go. And then again, if you want someone down below, though, I mean, go to Seattle. Juwan Green, 4,200. Has been kind of a red zone target. He's got 3 touchdowns on the season. He's acting as that third wheel. Juwan Green ran like a 4.45 or something out of college. He can get open here, and I think he's going to continue to be a factor in a pass-heavy Seattle offense. So Juwan Green, 4,200, good value there too.
All right, Pierce, real quick.
Sticking with the Orlando theme, Lucky Jackson, sounds like a minor league baseball player, is going to be in Orlando for the DC Defenders. Orlando, one of the worst pass defenses in the XFL. And DC put up 37 points last week, so Lucky Jackson was a big part of that, over 100 yards receiving and a touchdown. And he's really underpriced.
Gentlemen, thank you. EPL Best Bets coming up right after a quick break when Jared Carabas shares with all of you who he's picking to win the World Series this year.
It's a team in the AL East.
Oh?
You ready for this one? You ready for this?
Yeah!
It's going to be the Toronto Blue Jays. Yeah.
We are here with DK Nation's Chinmay Vaidya and RotoWire's AJ Schultz for a little EPL match day best bets, and we are starting with the sweaty boot.
This is
Let's
crazy.
go. Unheard of. Chinmay, best bet of the weekend. Who gets it?
It's going to be a tough one here because there are a lot of intriguing options, but I'm going to go with Fulham on the money line against Bournemouth. I think Fulham is, getting put down a little bit after 2 straight losses, but I think they match up really well against Bournemouth, and we know this Bournemouth team is, not competing for anything big. Fulham is still kind of in the picture for a spot in Europe, whether that be Europa League or even Champions League if they make a late run here. I don't think it's going to happen, but I do think they offer tremendous value at plus 180 against a Bournemouth team that just hasn't been good all season. Give me Fulham on the money line as a sweaty boot pick for me this week.
AJ, what's up? Who's getting your sweaty boot?
I'm going to go money line, I'm going to go the total for the Wolves Nottingham Forest game here. Over 2.5 goals comes in at plus 140. You look at teams outside of the relegation zone, and these are the 2 worst goal differential teams there. Forest, for their part, giving up 49 goals this season. Wolverhampton 41. So I would expect we'll see plenty of goals in this one. Not a lot of defense. So take over 2.5 at plus 140.
Gentlemen, I got one more for you. AJ, share with me your favorite matchup on the board this weekend and give me your best bet from it.
Well, for me, I think, neither West Ham nor Southampton has been capable of scoring goals this season. So I'm going to target the total in that one as well. I don't hate going all the way to under 0.5 at plus 950. That's just tremendous value for 2 teams who can't seem to score. A more conservative option, under 1.5 for plus 240. You could even go less risk. You're not giving up a ton of juice to go under 2.5 at minus 130. I'll split the difference for myself, under 1.5 goals here, but really a 0-0 draw looks pretty good, especially at plus 950.
All right, bring us home, Chin May.
Well, Southampton double chance against West Ham comes in at plus 110, and I don't really hate that because neither of these teams, if you look at the standings, have really been able to separate themselves. It's a huge relegation battle game for both sides, and I would expect Southampton to come out hard. I like the opener, Man City and Liverpool. This has been a tremendous rivalry over the last few seasons. Liverpool have always measured themselves against Manchester City, and they actually won the last time out against City. So Liverpool double chance at plus 135. I know the Reds have struggled of late, but they've only allowed 2 goals in the last 5 matches across all competitions ever since they got smoked by Real Madrid at Anfield. They're a hot and cold team, but this is one that I think they'll really get up for, as they always do. Give me Liverpool a double chance coming in at plus 135 in the marquee matchup of the weekend.
All right, Chinmay, AJ, thank you so much. That is going to do it for us. The show is over. Madden's coming your way after this. The slate at 5. We'll be back tomorrow at 11. See you then.